Hello there and welcome back to the studio today. In today's episode we are going to continue the local color pass on this larger painting that we are working on. So on the palette here we have titanium white, flake white, burnt umber, alizarin crimson permanent, cadmium red, medium, yellow ochre, sap green, ultramarine blue, ivory black, and Neo McGilt medium. And if you would like to know exactly what materials I'm using and or contribute to this YouTube channel, I now have Amazon affiliate links in the description box down below. So down below you will see a list of the colors that I'm using as well as some of the brushes with the Amazon links next to them. So those links will redirect you straight to the Amazon site where you can purchase the same type of materials I'm using. And thank you in advance if you do purchase some of those materials, because Amazon will pay me a small amount. So let's go ahead and mix up some color. So I'm going to use my Neo McGilt medium, ivory black, and I'm going to mix up a color for the dark area of the background. So a little bit of ivory black and alizarin crimson permanent. And don't worry, you'll see the photo reference when we start painting. A little bit of burnt umber just to make sure we don't have a value that's too dark. And we actually want a lot of paint. So more ivory black, more burnt umber, alizarin crimson, a little more yellow ochre just so it will raise the value a little bit. Neo McGilt medium, until we have the consistency of melted butter. And you will have the photo reference to the top left corner of your screen as the painting develops. So you're a little bit further away now and at an angle, just so you can see the entire canvas. So I decided not to oil out the painting. Instead, what I'm going to do is to apply a little more medium, which you saw me applying onto the paint, and then work that way. So the fat over lean principle with oil painting simply means that you want to use more oil as you increase the number of layers. So right now this looks extremely dark, but let's just go ahead and test the darkness. So I'm going to use a little bit of ivory black. See that? See how much darker we can go? But of course I don't want to use straight black in this value. I just wanted to show you that we can still go darker. So let's blend that away. So now what I'm going to do is just cover the rest of this shape now. And now what we're going to do next with the same brush, I think I'm going to just keep moving down in this kind of direction. So with the same brush, just because it's the largest brush that I have, I'm going to mix up the ivory black, again with the alizarin crimson, a little bit of ultramarine blue, and now I'm going to put in this little darker segment here. Now I don't want it to be the darkest dark, so I am going to test it momentarily. Okay, so let's go ahead and test it. So I'm going to use a different brush, a little bit of mineral spirits, some Neo McGilt medium just to thin this out, and we're going to test this value. See that? We can still go darker, so we're good with that. So let's just go ahead and blend that away now. So how dark can you go? Alright, let's keep putting in that dark shape. So the ivory black, alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue. And I'm just letting it blend with the dark shape up here. So we are subdividing these larger shapes now. And I'm not too worried about like a super symmetrical line here, because I am going to kind of blend in with the red, or just have these shapes blend in. And this is actually a curtain that's behind her. As you can see, hopefully it's visible enough in the photo reference. Okay, so now that we have that darker shape, I'm going to go ahead and mix up a little more of a red-like color. A little bit of the cadmium red medium. So I want this value to be a little bit lighter than this, but I don't want it to be too much lighter, if that makes any sense. I want it to be maybe, I don't know, like 3 steps lighter. And I'm going to need a lot more cadmium red. Let's see, the cadmium red and the burnt umber. Now it is kind of purple violet-ish, but I think what I'll do is in the perceptual color stage, so the next stage, I will put in that kind of bluish color. So remember, this is still the local color stage, so we want to keep the color mixtures pretty simple, and then we'll build onto them. So I think this is about good. So I think that might be, in fact, a little too light, so a little more alizarin, ultramarine blue. Let's see what happens. There we go. That is the color that I wanted. So I'm going to be kind of filling in the shapes side by side to one another. So let me show you what I mean by that. So it's actually going to be a little bit darker. There's going to be a darker red here. So we're going to just kind of mix them together on the palette like so. There we go. So the background values are pretty important, even though, you know, you can just say, well, it's just the background. But yeah, I want there to be some nuance to the background. See how I'm starting to blend that shape together? I think it just, I don't know, I think it looks better when there's more variety in the background. Oh yeah, I gotta cover that. That more reddish color that I had earlier. Okay. Alright, so let's continue to do that over here. And I want to relate the background colors to one another in terms of their value. So in the local color stage, you know, the stage in the classical process that we are currently in, the priority is value. Value is the main priority, but we are adding in what I'm calling local colors, which is the average color within a given shape. You know, like it's the average color for a baseball is just the color of a baseball. But then, you know, if you put the baseball in like sunlight or something like that, then, you know, the color of the baseball will look differently in the sunlight versus like a window light. But you can always start out with that kind of color, you know, like the regular baseball color, and then add onto it the quality of the light. Alright, so now that we have that darker shape, let's continue to transition those values. So now the cadmium red, the alizarin crimson, permanent, ultramarine blue, a little more neo magenta medium. And remember, you want to increase the medium, or the amount of medium you use, with the number of layers. So I'm actually standing back. Let's see. So I make a mark and then I stand back. I want to keep relating these shapes. Okay, so now this portion is going to be a red, but it's going to be a much darker red. So let's mix into here. Let's try this out. There we go. Now how dark is it in comparison to that? I think it can still go a little darker, so ultramarine blue. Very lightly though. There we go. And we're kind of missing some of this dark here just because it faded. So what I'm going to do is just oil it out so you can see the value that it is, the true value that is. Okay, so now you can see that. Might as well oil out the other side. I usually say just oil out the areas that you're going to work on, but this is kind of an exception because I want to be able to see these values in comparison to one another. I don't think I'll oil out the flesh tones. Okay. Alright, that ought to be good enough. Now it's looking a little too flat, but no, whatever. We'll be able to adjust the, you know, the edge quality later. Okay, so now some more ultramarine blue. Now we're going to put in this dark accent right here. I may actually need to switch to a different brush, so let's just cover the reds first. The dark reds, that is. So there's one shape for the dark red there, and another shape for the dark red over here. But this is going to get darker down here because it's turning away from the light. So I'm going to start off with this lighter tone, okay? And then I'm going to transition into the darker one. So the ultramarine blue, I'm going to have to add a little more alizarin crimson soon. Okay, a little more ultramarine blue, more medium. There we go. That's almost the value we need. I'm getting there. Now some more ivory black, ultramarine blue. There we go. That's the value I wanted. Alright, now I'm going to have to transition into another brush. This is like my second to largest brush. Ultramarine blue, ivory black, yellow ochre. I want to relate these values to one another, okay? So this value here is clearly darker than the surrounding values, okay? And it's cooler, and that's actually what I wanted, so that's neat. Rarely does that happen to me though, that I get the color that I want first try. Now with a smaller brush, same color. I'll put in the strap. Now let's just cover this shape. Alright, now with a different brush, we're going to want a darker shape. We want to relate these values to each other constantly. So if anything is going to get, really close to straight black, it's going to be this area here, underneath of the drapery. A little bit more ultramarine. And those are the magical moments right there. Single brush stroke. Carry it all the way through. It's like magic. Now we're going to use the same brush and just let it blend into these colors that we have here. Super simple. Okay, a little more dark. Now we're going to use the other brush, like so. Moving very quickly with these shapes. Now the rest of the red, I'll cover it later. I really want to, relate these shapes to one another now. So now the back side of the shirt is going to be pretty dark. So we're going to use the ivory black, ultramarine blue. I'm tempted to use the flake white, but I'm not. Neo medium. Okay. I'm going to show you a little trick here. So first thing I want to do is get the edge. And I'm trying to get the accuracy of like a pencil drawing. Simple straight lines and angles is the way to go. There we go. There we go. Super simple. Just let that blend in the background. Okay, so the trick that I was going to say is, we really don't want the edge to be that sharp. So with a clean and soft brush, just kind of fuzz the edge, or fluff the edge out with a clean brush. You really don't want to leave any super sharp edges just yet. So, softening. Can't make it soft enough, really. Okay, now the next thing I want to do, before covering all this the red in the background, is now start to mix up some color shapes for this bottom section. So let's go ahead and get a different brush. Maybe not. Let's just use this one. So the titanium white, what's already on it? I think something gray. So how about we mix up this one? So it's going to be kind of a cool yellow ochreish type color. So a little more yellow ochre. Neo McGill medium. Let's try some ultramarine blue. Now we can use the flake white. Remember, flake white has this property of which it allows you to use more of it without raising the value too much, thus allowing you to have a thicker mixture of paint. I think that value is pretty good, almost too bright though. What am I going to do? A little more of the ultramarine blue and a little more yellow ochre and a little more of both. Alright, let's try out this value. That's pretty good. It might be almost a little too light for my taste, so I'm going to use a little more ivory black, yellow ochre. So that's a little better. So what I'm going to do is get a rag, just a rag that I had lying around, to subtract a little bit from what I had. Whoops. Okay. Let it mix a little bit. So I realized that the hue is a little more yellow, so I'm going to go ahead and go back to the yellow ochre and burnt umber. So yellow ochre and burnt umber just to get a kind of more yellowish tone. There we go. And of course we'll build the more nuanced colors on top of this more basic one. Might be too green. Alright, so I'm going to make a little decision here. So I'm going to leave this one kind of in the greenish color that it is, and then make this one warmer. So I'm going to risk it here. So I'm going to use the cadmium red, yellow ochre. It's almost the same color as the underpainting, but a little bit, I don't know, a little bit more green. And now it's going to get darker down there, so let's use the sap green. And the way I'm going to approach the, the patterning is to look for the large pattern first. So large pattern goes like this, and I don't know if I like the pattern actually. So I'm just going to fill in a dark shape. I may or may not put the pattern later. Always remember, you're not copying, you're interpreting visual information. And you get to choose what you want to put in and leave out. And I don't know, I don't want to put in that pattern just yet. Alright, so how about with the same brush, some more titanium white, ultramarine blue, maybe a little more ivory black. So I want a value that's lighter and a little bit cooler. The yellow ochre. Let's see if I can get you even closer to the mixture. Even more yellow ochre. Might be too light again, so the ivory black. There we go. And some more Neo McGill medium. Alright, let's try this out. So this shape, I want it to be a little bit lighter in terms of the value and a little bit cooler. So I am pushing the value a little bit brighter than the photo reference, which is okay. I always like to push the contrast a little bit more, but I need to make another decision. So I'm going to put a little more titanium white. just a little bit. We're going to push this area lighter. So now a little bit of ultramarine blue, a little more ivory black. We're going to push that darker, but just a little bit darker. And now with a little more ivory black, we're going to paint in this side plane to this thing that she's leaning her arm on. So again, this is the local, we're finishing up the local color stage. So closing up the form is optional. I'm leaving it optional for you know, all the stages before the last one. Though I could close up the forms if I want to. Closing up the form just means basically putting in all of these smaller plane divisions, but I kind of don't want to. I just want to be able to see all of these colors as a whole first. And I want to be careful not to cover the entire underpainting, especially near the bottom portion, just because of the awesome factor. So the awesome factor is when you can see a little bit of the underpainting showing through. You see that in a lot of classical paintings. And of course I'm joking, right? It's not called the awesome factor, but I don't know. I'm going to name it the awesome factor, at least for today. So I like when you can see traces of the underpainting in a classical painting. So now what's left? So the last thing to do really is to cover the rest of the dark here. Now there's a little bit of a smaller shape somewhere over here, but I don't think I need it. But what I do need is something for our model to be resting on. So this fabric in the photo reference actually comes all the way up to here, and I must have missed that in the underpainting. So again, you can always, you know, you can always refine the information that you were looking for in the previous stage, always, because that's, I mean, it's a building process, okay? I'm talking too much, so let's just cover the rest of this. I'm just feeling kind of goofy today. Alright, so let's cover a little bit of burnt umber, more painting, less talking. Alright, cover, cover. So now it looks like she is resting on some kind of, you know, platform. So we don't have a floating model. So now we're going to use the alizarin crimson permanent, more Neo McGilt medium, and I'm going to use the tiniest bit of the odorless mineral spirits, and I do mean the tiniest, okay, tiniest bit of mineral spirits to thin out the paint. Super tiny. And with mineral spirits, a little bit can go a long way, so we want to be very careful. Now I usually, and I pretty much 95% of the time, or something like that, I tend to thin out the paint with the medium instead. The Neo McGilt medium. But right now, I just want it to be even thinner. And I'm using kind of like a serpentine kind of brush stroke, just to get kind of more texture in the painting. I don't know, I just think it's more fun. Here's what I mean by serpentine. So kind of in a cross-hatching S. See that? To be honest, it really doesn't make a difference. I just like the, I don't know, I like the application of the paint, and I like the texture that it leaves, you know, when you kind of scribble the brush around. You see that in a lot of classical paintings, especially in the backgrounds. Like sometimes you'll see they're like little spots where you can see the bristle of the brush. And just like I was doing in the other side, I'm going to cover all the way down to here, okay? And then I'm going to get that thin brush and then soften. So let's just soften away. Nice and simple. Now I'm just going to repeat this process for the rest of the background. or should I say the red of the background. Now as we move all the way down here, we want to almost just barely apply the paint. And this is to preserve the awesome factor. Okay, you must preserve the awesome factor, which means you want to be able to see the underpainting. Preserve the underpainting. Okay, and this corner here I'm leaving kind of cropped, just because I don't like when things meet up the edge of the canvas I don't like to purposefully make something match up with the corner of the canvas. It just, I don't know, it just bothers me when something reaches the corner of the canvas. So just compositionally cropping it like this is ideal for me. Alright, now that all of the shapes are covered, the important thing now is to stand back and relate the large values to one another, okay? So this value must be darker than, say, I don't know, to be honest, I think this value is darker than this one, okay? This value is darker than this one. This one is very close to the background. It's very difficult for me to tell unless I put the picture in black and white or something like that. But you know, I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do instead is put in some of the lights for the hair. So let's go ahead and get the yellow ochre. Okay, so a few little spots of light for the hair. I don't want to make it too close to the flesh tone. So a little bit cooler, some more ultramarine blue. Now you see we've put quite a few little spots of light in the hair. So I think that just helps to, I don't know, just have some reflected light. Though I do think it may be too bright. So what I'll do is subtract some of it with a dry brush to get a kind of ghost-like effect. And we want to let the underpainting show through, especially in the hair. I don't know, it's just a really neat thing when you see the underpainting in the hair. So again, preserving the awesome factor is very important. I mean, I'm sure somebody has named this before, you know, leaving some of the underpainting to show, but come on. I'm just having fun with the name. Alright, so now I might have over softened it a little bit, but that's okay. I'm going to come back in with the darker value. So I have the same brush that I used for these shapes, or should I say, I think it was for the shirt. Either way, it's a darker value. I'm just going to very lightly sharpen these edges. Very lightly. Alright, now I'm going to stand back, see if there are any other adjustments that I should make, and I think there is one. This value, I gotta be careful. I want it to get darker because it's kind of too similar to the background, but then again it's going to conflict with this dark. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to push this dark. So the Neoma Gilt Medium, Alizarin Ivory Black, Ultramarine Blue, a little bit of Burnt Umber just so we don't make it too dark. Okay, gotta be very cautious with this value. Okay, so I made it a little bit darker, yet I didn't make it straight, you know, ivory black. Okay, now that edge is getting too sharp, so what I'm going to do, as you might expect, soften. Okay, so now that I've made that a little bit darker, I'm going to make the dark red of the clothing over here, or the drapery. Let's use ultramarine blue. We're going to make it a little darker. But very carefully, because I don't want this value to conflict with this value, so I have to be careful. Alright, I think that's a little better. But then again, this edge is like too straight. Softening a little more. So I think that's much better actually. At least in my opinion. Gotta be careful not to make it too sharp. I think that'll be about it. Alright, so we now have the large value relationships established beyond the the scope of the burnt umber titanium white value range. So that means we have expanded the entire value range. And now that we've blocked in all of these basic values and basic colors, that means that we're now done with the local color stage on this painting. The next stage that we will begin will be the perceptual color stage, where we will then relate certain spots of color to one another and make more and more refined color relationships. And then after that, we'll move on to the selective render. That being said, I really hope that you have a wonderful day. Don't forget to keep sending me images through my Instagram, my website, or my Facebook, though I think my website might be down for maintenance pretty soon, but you can definitely contact me through Yupari Artist on Facebook or Yupari Fine Art on Instagram if you want to send me pictures of your pets, your dogs, your cats, your birds. I really want to do more pet portraits and wildlife painting, so if you have some wildlife photography. I do have a lot in my inbox to look over, but I would really appreciate if you'd send me more pictures for those kinds of paintings, just so you know it's not the same kind of, like Monday underpainting, Tuesday color painting, like Wednesday blah blah blah. I don't want it to be the same painting every single day. I want to have some variation in there with the episodes. That being said, always remember, in a world that can be so negative, be the spark that ignites positivity amongst all of us. I really do hope that you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow.